Okay, jumping right into it here, the question is, are DSTs risky? And the answer is yes, DSTs are risky. They are investments in real estate. All real estate contains risks, and DSTs include the same types of risk that owning real estate has. So just like the properties that you own on your own and you're exchanging out of, there's risks with those. There's no guarantees that property values go up. And in fact, property values can go down. Same for DSTs. And with the properties you own, there's risk that the tenants might not pay rent each month. And that's the same with DSTs. There's no guarantees for rent or cash flow or appreciation. So we're going to go over a list of partial list of risk factors that do make DSTs risky, just like real estate. And we do encourage our clients to understand these risk factors and ask questions as to how they can potentially mitigate and minimize these risk factors. So DST risk number one, loss of principal due to lender foreclosure. This is something that, in my opinion, is the greatest risk of real estate and DST investments, is if you have a loan on the property and something happens at the property, maybe rental rates soften or there's new construction and there's concession wars, or your tenant goes bankrupt, or property values drop below the loan value, and you're potentially foreclosed on, right? That's a complete loss of your investor equity due to that lender foreclosure. So that's risk number one. Now, one of the main ways that we mitigate that risk at K Properties is by having available for our investors typically around 5 to 10 different DST offerings that are completely debt-free, that have no loans on the properties, and you have no risk of a lender foreclosure. This is something a lot of our investors are very, very interested in, is a way to protect themselves from that DST risk number one of a loss of principal due to lender foreclosure. We do also have DSTs on our marketplace, which has over 25 different DST sponsor companies at KPI1031.com, typically 20 to 40 different DST offerings. We do have properties that have loans on them for those investors that need to purchase equal or greater value and replace debt in their 1031 exchange. So we have those, but you do have that risk of a lender foreclosure and a loss of principal. And so that's why we also have our debt-free DSTs that have no risk of lender foreclosure. DST risk number two, cash flow risk. Just like I was saying earlier, there's no guarantees for cash flow, for rent to come in. There's no guarantees. And so we really encourage our clients to understand that just like the properties they own in their own town, there's no guarantees that the tenants are going to pay rent each month. And so that is a risk. There's no guarantees for distributions. And so one of the ways to potentially mitigate that risk is to build a diversified portfolio so you have many diverse income streams. So if something happens to one, hopefully it doesn't happen to the rest. You know, diversification does not guarantee profits or income, and it does not guarantee against losses, but we believe it's the prudent thing to do. Also, to mitigate the cash flow risk of investing in real estate and DSTs, we encourage clients to consider, very large Fortune 500 companies that are on the lease for 5, 10, or 15 years, and they're obligated contractually to pay the rent to the DST each and every month. And companies like FedEx or Walgreens or UPS or Amazon, these are large Fortune 500 companies. A lot of them have investment grade credit ratings. These are some of the largest companies in the world. Yes, you still have risk that those companies could go out of business and go bankrupt, but we believe likely not going to happen, but it is a risk. And so you do have cash flow risk with DSTs. DST risk number three, tenant bankruptcy risk. Just like I said earlier, you have large Fortune 500 companies that are on those leases for 5, 10, 15, 20 years in many DSTs. And so, yes, you could have a tenant go bankrupt, but if you're looking at investment grade companies, a lot of times essential businesses that were able to stay open during the pandemic, and necessity-based businesses, you are protecting yourself from tenant bankruptcy risk. Now, if you were to go into a property that has a lease with a mom and pop or a franchisee or a bunch of small tenants, you definitely have tenant bankruptcy risk. And one of the ways to mitigate, again, is through that diversified portfolio and really understanding who your tenants are and how what the potential likelihood of them going bankruptcy is. There's no guarantees for anything in real estate, and same for DSTs. DST risk number four, softening rental rates. So when rental rates go down, that affects property values, that affects your cash flow monthly, and it's something that you need to understand that it's part of real estate, softening rental rates, and that could be from new construction, that could be from distress or economic disruption in the market or the business cycle, and it's something to be aware of as a risk that investors need to understand. All of these risks that we're talking about, they're typically discussed in the private placement memorandum for each DST offering. And when you're working with K Properties, we provide you those offering private placement memorandums. You get to read them, you get to understand the business plan, you get to understand the risk factors, and decide if it makes sense for your particular situation. DST risk number 5, the last risk here, is lack of control. So DSTs contain the risk of you as the investor not being able to make decisions. So if you are somebody who really likes to be able to, choose which tenants to go into your apartment property or small commercial property and paint the walls blue or paint the roof, or do whatever you want to do on the property and manage that property, that's a risk because you have lack of control in a DST. DSTs are designed as a completely passive investment where the signatory trustee or the sponsor company, the DST sponsor, makes the decisions on behalf of the investors, on behalf of the asset. And so if you're not comfortable with lack of control and a completely passive investment, then that's definitely a risk for you. Many of our clients, they like DSTs because they don't want to deal with the tenants, toilets, and trash, the 3 Ts. They're tired of actively managing their properties. And they want to do things that they want to enjoy. They want to travel. They want to spend time with kids and grandkids and other businesses that they might have. And so many of our clients, they're happy that there's no lack of control. But for, somebody that really has to have control, then DSTs are something that might not be for you. So as always, for a full discussion of risk factors, we encourage you to read the private placement memorandum. We'll walk you through those risk factors. We'll discuss them with you and make sure to do that prior to considering an investment.
So if you visit kpi1031.com, you'll be able to log in for free access. And then also you'll get a number of different resources available to our investors on kpi1031.com. You get a free book on 1031 DST properties. So we'll send you a copy of that. A free subscription to the 1031 DST Digest magazine, which has all sorts of case studies, tenant overviews, educational resources and articles in the 1031 DST Digest. You'll get access to free educational 1031 DST conference calls. We host weekly conference calls every week with our investors on various topics in it regarding 1031 exchanges, asset classes, financing, debt-free, zero coupon offerings, different strategies to use when thinking about a 1031 exchange into DST properties. You get very, very educational conference calls. We'll get you access to those. Our team's here to help. We've done a lot of these DST transactions. We've helped thousands of investors nationwide complete 1031 exchanges into DSTs. We're here for you. Reach out to us at any time, and just really appreciate everybody taking the time to join us today.